Entrepreneurship is hard, so let's fix that and dive into our heroes' journeys. This is Taking Flight, an entrepreneur's journey, and I'm Sarah Torville. Join me as we delve deep into the passions, expertise, and experiences of those already in flight. This show is sponsored by EO Atlanta. Well, here we are again for another, what I'm expecting to be very, very exciting and educational Entrepreneur's Flight podcast. I'm really, really delighted to have our guest join us today. He is a leader, an entrepreneur, an investment manager, real estate developer, co-founder and managing partner at Banyan Investment Group, Andy Chopra. Welcome, Andy.
Yeah, great, Sarah. Thank you. I appreciate you having me. It's an honor to be featured on your podcast and look forward to spending the next hour with you.
Yeah, I'm excited. So excited to have you here. So I want to get straight into it. There's a lot I want to ask you and a lot I know our listeners are going to want to learn from you. So Andy, when you took your first flight into your entrepreneurial journey, what did you get right?
What did I get right, man? Many entrepreneurs probably don't think about this question. We always focus on what we got wrong, and
Yeah.
what I like to say is, opportunities for improvement. But what I'll say about getting it right, in no particular order here, it was going into a field or an industry, maybe is a better way to put it, that I already had familiarity with. I grew up in the hotel business, and although we are a commercial real estate investment firm, we primarily focus on hotel investments. So I had a good idea of the operational side of hotels as a class of real estate, which really sets us apart from other classes of real estate. You're really buying sticks and bricks, as I call it, and then the business that's housed within the sticks and bricks. So in order to drive value for your building, you have to operate a profitable business. So coming up as an owner-operator owner-operator family, I should say, had a good familiarity of how to maximize margins as an operating hotel with minimal sacrifice, I should say, to the guest experience. So going into an industry that I understood was what I got right. Going into business with a partner who had a very similar background to me. It's uncanny, actually, how similar our backgrounds are. And we met each other about 22 years ago when I first moved to Atlanta, and it turns out that we were both born, and I met him socially, of course. His name is Rakesh, and turns out we were both born at the same hospital in Toronto, Canada, 40 some odd years ago.
That's incredible.
It took us two and a half decades or so to finally meet. And then, he grew up in a hotel family as well. And so again, leveraging our collective knowledge, along with our collective Rolodexes to go out and really start to scale an investment management platform, I think was one of the key contributing factors to success, or really what we got right, to answer your question.
Right.
And the third one, I don't know if this would be getting it right, because when I married my wife, Erin, I was not an entrepreneur yet, although I was getting close to taking that step and beginning the journey. But I would say, looking back on it, having a supportive spouse and really network of family and close friends that are there at the beginning when it's a roller coaster. Well, let's be real, it's always a roller coaster, but at the beginning, especially when you're really bootstrapping and just trying to figure stuff out, having that support network around me, I thought was, in hindsight, incredibly valuable. And I'm not sure, I'll be frank, I'm not sure we would have made it without it.
Yeah. Three very, very, very great things you got right, it sounds like. So, yeah. And so I wouldn't mind asking you, if you don't mind, the family background. So you mentioned like hotels and the family. Can you just share that with me a little bit?
Yeah, of course. So I grew up in an entrepreneurial family. My father started his entrepreneurial journey as a hotelier in the early 80s. So I mentioned earlier, I was born in Toronto. We moved to Florida when I was, in not even kindergarten, like pre-K. And We lived in a hotel room. There was a hot plate that my mom used to cook at, and we lived in the hotel rooms, and you didn't have to pay rent anywhere, right? And you just commute to the office downstairs, which I guess a lot of us are doing today anyways.
Yeah, that's
Oh
right.
man, was a bit of a trendsetter with this work from home themes that we've all experienced lately. But yeah, I mean, he had some friends that were in the hotel business, and they encouraged him to move to Florida where they were located to get into it. But that was the extent of his knowledge.
Right.
So my background is my family's from India, and entrepreneurial, I guess, energy is pretty prevalent in India, and as particularly with immigrants. And so, there was, I always say that, he, in a way, kind of burned the boats coming over here. They, didn't grow up with a ton of means, and, you screwed and saved to come here. Here's the one-way ticket. So you better succeed, right? And I think as entrepreneurs, we all have that in us, but perhaps in immigrants, it's a bit exacerbated and amplified. Yeah. So anyway, he grew up, and then I grew up in the business. He had a series of partnerships over time. A few partners decided, not to keep going. He stuck with it and ended up buying everyone else out. At that point, we were in a small town in Western Kentucky called Paducah, Kentucky. At that point, he had bought everyone else, so we're not moving anymore. This is home, and he ended up developing a few properties there. Never had partners, and up until his retirement a few years ago, went to the hotel 6 days a week, signed payroll checks every 2 weeks, monitored time clock. I mean, a true operator.
Right.
And for me, I never realized, Sarah, that I grew up in a real estate family until well after college.
Right.
Because although I had seen hotels develop, my dad had involved me as much as he could, given that I was in high school at the time. An invaluable experience, by the way. I grew up looking through the lens of an operator,
right,
not necessarily a developer. So it didn't strike me until I finished graduate school, or I started a program for my Master of Science in Commercial Real Estate and Finance, when I had a light bulb moment. So wait a second.
This is what it is.
Right. Yeah. There's more to the hotel, a lot more in the hotel, more ways to drive value, I should say.
Yes. Yeah.
In the hotel business, than just showing up every single day and being an operator. You can pay people to do that.
Yeah.
Let's go scale, and let's really create value in sticks and bricks through efficient asset management and surrounding ourselves with really smart people. So, I'll share one more thing with you. I have a distinct memory, and I'm 45 years old. I have a distinct memory of when I was in sixth grade. So that would have made me around 11 or so. And again, this is in Paducah, Kentucky now. And I'm at a sleepover with some friends, and it's a small town, right? None of my friends in school were part of entrepreneur families. They were all doctors and engineers and all that. And I remember one of the boys at the sleepover, we were talking about what we wanted to kind of be, we wanted to grow up, blah, blah, blah. And there was, for those of us who still get the newspaper, the rolled up newspaper on the driveway, there was one sitting in my friend's kitchen, and he hands it to me. He goes, "Put it under your arm." And I put it under my arm, and he goes, "Walk around." And I was like, "Ha ha." I start walking around. He goes, "That's going to be you when you grow up. I can see you being a business owner." I didn't even know I was projecting anything like that. But when I think about these things, it's interesting to me, because it's like, it's just, I guess you're a product of your environment, what you grew up in. And I never questioned in my mind that I wouldn't work for myself one day. Like it wasn't even like this pipe dream. It wasn't this, 1,000 things have to go right in order for me to do it. It was always like, it's going to happen. Right. I'm going to make it happen. And after I cut my teeth in the corporate world, it's up to me to have my own name on the signature line of a paycheck on the front of the check.
Yes. Very important.
I don't want my name on the back of the check. I want it on the front of the check.
Yeah.
And I just never questioned it. And again, going back to the support network, I think people around me, again, now in hindsight, even from childhood, I think always had that belief in me. And it was in my brain, it was always a matter of grit, effort, and time, not what ifs.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like you definitely saw that in your father, for sure. I mean, you're right. When you come over as an immigrant, you got to make it work. And he, And then you saw it day by day, living in the hotel with him. I mean, it's like, gosh, you just had it. You saw it firsthand.
I mean, we were, I say he put me to work, and I certainly don't mean that in a negative or diminutive way. He put me to work so I could learn.
Yeah.
And, as a child, I would follow housekeepers around, helping clean rooms. I spent summers working with the maintenance people, graduated all the way up to the front desk, and then finally the accounting side of the equation. And again, it never felt like I was showing up to a job. It was family business. And it's like, hey, this is what I need. This is what I should be doing.
Yeah. I'm just thinking that through a little bit more. And I don't want to harbor on this point, but I just feel that the exposure you get, because I've had exposure to a hotel, not as much as you have. But I just tell you this because I can see to some extent what you've gone through and how impactful it's been. But my mother was always a pretty senior person in a group of hotels. And they're down in Bournemouth on the south coast of England. Mm-hmm. And so I was, as my mother, who was quite a bigwig in the hotel, she kind of would jump from hotel to hotel. I was just in those hotels from a very early age. I started at the age of 10 years old working in the laundry room.
Yeah.
And so you're right. So it was like laundry room, chambermaid. You're now serving people. I never actually made it to checking people in. I kind of wasn't quite good enough, maybe. Even to the point where I'm 50. So we put the phone lines in, the old cable, all of that.
Oh, yeah.
And I hadn't actually thought about, until you're saying it now, just the importance, forget about the operations, but even just the interactions with people. Yeah. All those different things that you had exposure to, Andy, is like, and then a lot of kids don't even get any of that until they get their first time job and they're 16 years of age.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So I'm just
that's you're absolutely right. I mean, it's the way that shapes and forms someone is invaluable.
Yeah.
I agree with you. I mean, to have that exposure at a young age, how can it not shape?
Yeah, no, you've had firsthand experience, but we're going to get onto more of that in a minute. So it's got me realizing and thinking about something. So thank you for that.
Yeah.
So my next question, like you kind of partially answered it, but I want to see if there's anything else. So who are your co-pilots on this journey? I know you mentioned your wife, and I know how important that is to have a great spouse, and maybe we can talk more about that. But is there anybody else? And you mentioned a business partner, but I'm just keen to see if there's anyone else.
Yeah. So as I mentioned, my business partner, I would call other co-pilots, integral. Look, all team members are important. There's no doubt. I don't even like calling team members. I call them stakeholders. But we have a key group of executives that are work on with us. I hate the term boss, by the way, and I hate the term work for me.
I agree.
I was going to say collaborate, work with us, because if I ever feel like I'm the smartest person in the room, I better get the hell out of that room, like really quickly.
Yeah.
So other key co-pilots, I would say the executive team that we're privileged enough to work with, that have chosen to work with us. These are some really, really smart people, and they're valuable as co-pilots because we fostered an environment truly of collaboration in our firm. And I know that word gets thrown around a lot, but what I mean by that is, and this is actually something I learned in EO, all of our executive committee meetings and they're weekly, by the way, with my co-pilots, are no rank, no order. So I remember listening to or attending an EO talk here in Atlanta years ago, and it was a former Air Force fighter pilot, and he was in his full flight suit doing the presentation. Now he does kind of executive coaching, and Jim Murphy's his name. Plug. I don't know if
you out there.
He posed a question that I never even thought about. It was super basic, right? He's in his flight suit, and he's like, "Does anyone know why all of our badges, particularly our rank, are on Velcro?"
Right.
So I've always noticed. I never thought about it. I don't know. And the answer was because after flight training or a mission, we all regroup in a closed room environment, take off our badges, and really have frank discussions about what worked, and more importantly, what didn't work and how to improve. Because if we don't do it that way, people are going to die.
Right.
Fairly dramatic, I know. But the point was, we have to be able to have open, honest communication with one another, right? Because again, I acknowledge I'm not the smartest person in the room.
Yeah.
I want to surround myself with smarter people. And those people have to be able to have fun, diplomatic, and down-to-earth conversations. That's why I say those co-pilots are successful in our entrepreneurial journey, because they do that.
Yeah.
When I'm wrong, tell me. If I make a mistake, I'll be the first to admit it. I'll be the first to fall on my sword, but I'll also be the first to say, I learned from it.
Yeah.
It won't happen again.
Yeah. No, I agree. So removing it means like we're taking off any hierarchy.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
Absolutely.
Yes. It doesn't matter whatever level you are in the company. We say it if we mean it, type of thing.
Yeah. Again, as long as we have a sense of diplomacy, then all good.
I agree with you.
It's being people, right? It's just like, let's be real and honest with one another and do it in a productive way.
Yeah. No, I agree. That's fabulous. Yeah, really great. I'm hoping we got some great listeners here, because we're learning a lot. I'm learning a lot, and we're only 17 minutes in. This is great. Okay, so tell me, what challenge are you kind of really working on right now, and or a challenge that you've had to solve recently? Is there something you can share with us, and how did you do that?
Yeah. So we're going through a really wonderful, I'll say, transition. And I hesitate to use the word pivot, but we are looking at and instituting now fairly major changes within our company. So anytime there's change, there's challenge, there's also opportunity. But what we're really going to focus on, leading up to really this year, 2022, I'll say we, hang on, I get careful. Because we haven't officially launched yet.
Okay.
So I don't want to pull the curtain back too soon. Up until 2022, our company was seen as both a hotel management company and investment company all in one.
Right.
Now we've intentionally put up a curtain between our property management company and hired a very capable, skilled, seasoned, and well-respected hotel veteran to be the CEO and president of that platform. That's set aside. The curtain on our side, on my side, is going to be focused purely on investment management. So really what I've been doing anyway, but one thing that I say quite a bit is I kind of joke when I say this, but it's the truth. I don't know why we put locks on the front door of a hotel. It's a 24/7 business.
Yeah.
If you ever have to use it, probably something major going on. Right.
I never even noticed a lock on the front door of a hotel. But
Right. So, and I say that to say every time we would grow and buy another hotel and our unit growth would increase, there would be very subtle yet real pinches to bandwidth. Right. So when my partner and I first starting, I would say from 1 to about 9 to 10 hotel properties still had pretty good balance. And I don't mean work-life balance. By the way, I don't believe in that. I think it's work-life harmony. Okay, for me. Right. But it was more about just, are we really good at operations, or are we really good at identifying opportunities, capitalizing and growing in terms of increasing our unit count? Right. It's the latter that drives me, but the former, unfortunately, every time we grew was pinching more and more bandwidth. Right. So when we got to around 20 or so properties, it started to become, it was just too much. It's like, what are we going to be when we grow up?
Yeah.
Personally, what fulfilled me was the investment side of the equation. That's to fill my cup. Fortunately, my partner was the same way. So that's what led to the curtain. Here we are now.
Right.
But the challenges associated with that is really, there's many challenges. One, it's slowly but surely changing the perceptions of the investment community as they look at us, right? Before we were always dropped in the bucket of operator. Now it's like, hey, we're an investment manager. And look, we've done almost $500 million in AUM in our 12-year history. So, this certainly isn't our first rodeo in being an investment manager. And we've done it in a series of ways. Everything from relatively unsophisticated races with friends and family to super sophisticated races in large complex fund structures. The other challenge is again assembling that team. I think any entrepreneur listening right now understands that despite certain economic headwinds out there, the market for talent is still pretty tight. right? So being able to intelligently put that team together and make sure it's worth their while, not purely from a monetary standpoint, but even a culture standpoint, back to the collaboration and like, look, we're all on the same team, right? Yeah. We're all going to win together or lose together. And hopefully it's won together. I'd say another challenge, and this is probably true of anyone that's listening right now that's in commercial real estate, is just a general macro winds around capital markets. It's shocking to me how quickly things have changed in terms of both debt, being able to obtain financing. So remember, we're commercial real estate. We are capital intensive.
Right.
Like we have to use leverage to drive returns. It's just normal for us. The cost of that leverage has, in certain instances, nearly tripled in the last 9 months. I've never seen anything like that, and there's a whole separate podcast on why that is. But it makes it challenging to capitalize transactions. And it's also, all the headlines with the talk of potential impending recession and choppiness in the equities markets is causing institutional investors and retail investors who would normally invest alongside us to really scrutinize every deal. And honestly, they should, but I think the headlines are creating.
People are nervous and questioning everything. Yeah. So just going back to you're talking about like the curtain, you're kind of separating the two companies. So are you creating a separate? I mean, I don't want you to give everything away here. So, but I mean, I'm thinking about our listeners and I think you when you're growing your business, like you say, you get to a pivotal point where something has to change. For various reasons, like growth reasons or just appetite, or your own professional appetite. You realize which side you wanted to be on. What does that look like? How do you go ahead and how are you making that change? Like even from a people standpoint, is it like, okay, you want to come over this side? Like how are you just deciding that?
It's a metamorphosis. It's a major evolution.
Right.
And it's not one that occurs overnight. It's one that has been in process for the greater part of 18 months now.
Right.
And it's a tremendously important to get the strategy right. I would argue infinitely more important to tactically execute correctly.
Yeah.
Right. So, and that's really why we've been thoughtful and methodical about this. We've involved external consultants
to ask you that. Yeah, good.
To really to help us identify blind spots. We've involved external consultants to assist with branding and how to get the messaging out.
Good.
And again, that's formally going to launch here in the next few weeks. But so sneak peek again. And I think it also involved a lot of introspection. And the pandemic was impactful in everyone's life. There's no doubt about it. For us in the hotel space, it was especially impactful to our business in general. I refuse to look at it though through this lens of pessimism and why did this happen to me? I look at it more as like, hey, it's a tremendous opportunity to really think about what is fulfilling and let's start working down that path.
Yeah, that's what you're doing. That's what you're doing.
Exactly. Yeah.
So good. Okay. Love to hear all that. There's so much. It sounds like you're going through a lot right now, but it's all very, very positive. So glad to see as well that, like you say, you've taken COVID but it's really forced you, and sounds like you wanted it to reshape where things are going. So it's nice to hear that.
Absolutely.
So, many entrepreneurs I know go and choose that book. There's many books we use, but when you're going through something difficult, there can be a really good book. I don't know if there's a book you want to speak to right now that's helped solve that problem, that specific problem, or something in general, a book you want to share.
Yeah, it's interesting. So up until a couple of years ago, I've always been a voracious reader, but I view reading over the last, let's just call it the first 8 or 10 years of my entrepreneurial journey as an escape. So I would generally read like more fiction books or books on travel. Travel is my wife and I's passions. But during the pandemic, I really started getting into podcasts and back to business books, right? Again, thinking about this evolution and like, let's get smart about, things that can drive the future success of the company. The one book that really stuck out to me that I've read recently that I reference very often, and I think about very often, is The Making of an American Capitalist. It's the autobiography of Warren Buffett. I'm sorry, biography, not the biography. Yeah, he did not.
The Making of an American Capitalist. Okay.
Yep. And a friend of mine, very successful entrepreneur, I have a lot of respect for, Santosh Govindaraju down in Tampa. He had recommended it. And he got a lot of success out of it, or a lot of nuggets of wisdom, I suppose, out of it. So in reading that book, I tell you, the timing was amazing because I had always had I think like most people, I guess, a topical level of respect for Warren Buffett, but to really hear his story, but more importantly, understand his conviction as it relates to sticking to his core values was just incredible to me.
Right.
Look, I do most of my books on the iPad now, but for whatever reason, I could only find this book like old school. Right? It's like the pages, like a cover, what do you call it? Slopback. I probably not since grad school have I dog-eared, highlighted, and taken notes.
You were annotating. Is that the right word? My children.
There you go. That's the word. I mean,
annotating as you went through.
Yeah. And, but it talks about a story, he didn't achieve a huge level of success until he was around my age, which was inspiring to me. But I'd say the biggest takeaway was just sticking to core values and really, identifying, I should say, really sticky trends and sticking to it and not chasing shiny objects, just figuring out what you get at and just rinse, wash, and repeat.
Yeah, there's a lot to be said in that. I think that shiny new object thing, I think when you're starting out, even in the first definite 5 years, is you're like this.
Yes.
Constantly.
Yep.
And then it's so nice when you can go, you know what? No, I know what I need to be doing. Okay. Yeah. You're still learning. There's another level of learning, but to be able to turn those shiny new objects away and know what is shiny and what is not relevant is really satisfying, but it takes a while.
It is like it's in entrepreneur's DNA, right?
Yeah.
To see a shiny object and run after it.
Yeah.
And this is just anecdotal from my observations, but some of the most successful entrepreneurs I know, they figure out what they're really good at.
Yeah.
Then just run straight towards it. Right? Yeah. And a shiny object may show up from time to time, but that doesn't slow down. They may glance over and look at it and keep going.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or dog ear it and come back to it when you're ready.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. So good. Thank you for sharing that. So I'm loving our conversation. You know why? Because every time I've got my next question I want to ask you, I feel like we dipped into it, which I just think is great because it's like there's a whole series of different things you're going through, and I can feel this excitement from you, Andy. And I think that's great because my next question is, what excites you about the future? And I think you've touched on it, but I want to hear.
Yeah.
I mean, I know you're about to launch. You can't share too much, but what can you share?
Well, I can share that we are scaled now. We've got the right team to really go out and execute and grow. And we measure growth in assets under management. So as I mentioned earlier, and this is all documented, I mean, my team is aware of it and everyone's steadily marching towards this goal. But we, in our history, we've had $500 million in assets under management. But of course, we bought and sold properties. Currently, we're right around, I think, $270 million in AUM. Our goal is simple. It's $1 billion in assets under management within the next 18 months.
Right.
And
I don't really know what that means, though.
So that's
I hear the number, but what does that asset management mean? Meaning you're taking care of all these hotels and they add up to this value?
That's correct. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. If we were to appraise every hotel in our portfolio in 18 months, it should equate to at least $1 billion. So I should say the commercial real estate property. So that's the mission. What really excites me about it, though, is now that the team is assembled, watching them execute, right? And I know that's intangible, but watching them execute, watching them succeed, watching virtual high fives when a deal is on contract to buy or sell. Nothing drives me more than seeing the team excel in being able to really chase their passion, so to speak.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And by being able to do that, I know that they're going to show up ready to execute every day, continue to row in the same direction. And if the team is successful, the company's successful. If the company's successful, then I'll achieve level of success. Yeah. And honestly, that's something I've only recently learned. I think in I don't know, maybe every entrepreneur goes through this, but particularly when you're bootstrapping mode, you're always looking at the bottom line. Last person to get paid. Now I've realized that it's about top line growth, taking care of really smart, good people. And if all that works out, it's going to work out. Sure.
I agree with you. Yeah. I think many of us would feel that we've all become more empathetic leaders. Maybe COVID had something to do with it. Maybe growing up had something to do with it. But I feel the same as you do. I take great satisfaction from seeing my team succeed. And of course, that normally correlates to the company succeeding. But even just seeing them succeed is really not just because you created it. It's because, isn't it nice when people are winning? You know, like, I don't mean always commercially winning. I just mean winning on their own goals as an individual. And you know they're making it happen.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's important.
Yeah, very important too. So great. You got so many good things ahead of you. I'm excited for you. So who are you? So pre-flight, Andy, take me through a little bit of what were some kind of key milestones which happened to you before you started really kind of setting up your own company?
Oh, wow. Just a little bit of background. Yeah. So when I graduated from university, this was undergrad, of course, this was now back in 2000, it's 22 years ago. Mm-hmm. I was a business major, and in the back of the front part of my mind, I thought, okay, a lot of my friends are, interviewing for big jobs, and I was too. But I always knew, that if I don't get the job I want or I like, I'll move back home and join the family business. And there had never been any formal discussions around this. By the way, that was a big assumption made by me. I'd say one of the, and again, from college onwards, there was a few indelible moments that I really think shaped my life. And I think that first one leading up to graduation was a conversation with my father. And he said, he didn't say no to joining the family business, but he said, you know what? I think it would be valuable for you to join the corporate world for a few years, see how the world kind of works. Yeah. Right. And I was like, not necessarily I wanted to hear, but like, you know what? I respect my old man, smart. Yeah, I should probably do that. I was fortunate enough to get a job with Johnson & Johnson. Let's talk about big company experience.
Very big companies, yeah.
And they moved me to Atlanta. Right out of college, which is a whole funny story. I mean, they were like, they're used to hiring very experienced, seasoned people. And I was part of this college cohort that they had hired. It was funny how HR doesn't really change your policies. So I remember getting a phone call one day, like, hey, we're sending a moving truck on date X. And I'm looking around like, dude, I have a mattress and a couple of, those are my possessions. Like, what do you mean? So, a bit of an aside, but here I am now, joined a Fortune 50 company. I was fortunate enough to learn how big, large, well-respected machine. I mean, J&J is one of those well-respected companies in the world operate. When I think about even core values that I help craft for my company today, I instantly think about J&J's credo, which there's Harvard Business School courses, classes, and case studies designed around that, right? So one of my key takeaways was, just the importance they placed on culture and values, how it guided all their decisions. I was fortunate enough to have Johnson & Johnson offer to pay for my MBA, right, which led to that light bulb moment that I spoke about a little bit earlier. Other things that shaped me were the great financial crisis. So leading up to the crisis, I had recently left J&J. And remember, I'm coming from healthcare.
Right.
So my ear is not nearly as tuned to what was going on in the finance markets. And so I had put an offer on a couple of hotels here in Atlanta, again, thinking I'd be an owner operator. And luckily the offers were not accepted. Had they been accepted, I'm convinced we would have handed the keys back, because the GFC was devastating the economy in general, particularly.
Yeah.
But that shifting moment was that it was that exercise that started conversations between my now business partner and I about, hey, what happened in the early 90s, for example, was this major crash in real estate values. Like, maybe we shouldn't be looking at this as owner operators, do something bigger, right?
Mm-hmm.
And in his side of the business, his family's business, they were already a little bit further along than we were in terms of looking at it through the lens of the investment world. So I think being able to join a JV fashion with him was another pivotal moment that had it gone differently, we're probably not sitting on this podcast today, or maybe I'm doing something else. Who knows? It was interesting. Right around that time, I shared earlier how we have a passion for travel, and I also shared how we had offered on a couple of hotels and it didn't work out. And I started to think at that time, it's like, you know what, maybe, and I was newly married, by the way. Maybe this isn't just in the cards. How can I figure out a way to capitalize on this passion for travel that we have? So I went through this arduous process and eventually got accepted into the U.S. Diplomatic Corps, into the Foreign Service.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Okay.
And at the time, I was like, I was still proud of it, quite frankly. Yeah. 200,000 people apply every year, only 2,000 make it. So that was awesome to get the news. But
I don't even know what that is. What is that? What do you do?
Oh, that means I would have been working at basically embassies around the world for the U.S. government.
Right.
I was focused primarily on what they call the economic cone. So just helping with economic policy.
Right.
In the local country if they need it, and large companies that want to do business in those countries.
Right.
So, but you can see the world, right?
Yeah, definitely. You get reposted. Sometimes you get to some not so nice places. Other times you're in some amazing places.
Usually as a rookie, it's not too nice places, but eventually you end up in Paris, right?
Yes.
But I mentioned my wife. She was super supportive, whatever decision I wanted to make. And now remember, I've already left J&J, so now I'm not even earning a paycheck any longer.
Right.
And she was working. She was in banking, so she had still a pretty relatively stable job despite the GFC, the great financial crisis. So then it was a pivotal moment, right? I've got my wife supporting us, thank God. Yeah. So I have that stress away from me. We have this amazing opportunity to move to DC and then start, hopscotching around the globe. Mm-hmm. Or I've got these conversations going on with my now business partner about doing something bigger and better. Mm-hmm. I ultimately decided to go down the third path because after really thinking about it, I said, look, I've got this education in commercial real estate, this light bulb moment that I grew up in a real estate family. I know I can do this. Now I've got a partner I can work with to help really accomplish something. And after discussing with my wife, she's like, look, I'm still working. So if we fail now, then we don't have much to lose.
Yeah.
So off we went. And
there you go. Made that decision.
We bought our first deal in under contract in late 2009, bought it in 10. And I can say now, I can laugh about it now. We know what the hell we're doing. I mean, which entrepreneur does? Let's be real.
Exactly. Yeah. But you learn. That's how you learn.
Right. But we figured it out. And luckily we had very patient friends and family capital behind us.
Right.
And we ended up succeeding not only in that deal, but many, many others.
Yeah. Good. The rest is history.
The rest is history. Yeah. So those are, look, there's many pivotal moments, I think, but those are three that come to mind. Yeah.
Really good ones. Really good ones. So, introspection question. And if you were to do this all again, would you do it all over again?
Unequivocally, yes. I don't even think about that because I'm like many entrepreneurs. I think many entrepreneurs feel this way. I'm unemployable.
Yeah.
Like even when I was employed, in my mind, I was unemployed.
Yeah.
Although I valued my experience in the corporate world, I mean, my first few weeks there, I was clamoring to get out. My brain, like I said, it's just not wired for that.
No.
So short answer is yes, I'd do it again.
Yeah.
Are there things I would change? Sure, but hindsight's being 2020.
Yeah.
But I were faced, if it was 15 years ago and I was faced with three same decisions again, I can say unequivocally I would have chosen.
Yeah. Yeah. That's good. I love to hear that. Really love to hear that. So,
I probably have more hair if I chose one or the other.
Well, yeah.
That's what
Stress levels.
All price to pay.
Yeah, I don't know those. I've seen those corporate people. They don't always look so good. They look stressed. You know what? They don't have any control.
Yeah.
And I'm not criticizing. I think there's people in corporate world, they're phenomenal people and do great things for big corporations. But I think there's stress everywhere with the climate the way it is. No one's really in control. I think as an entrepreneur, we feel like we own our own destiny more, but who knows? And COVID showed us actually none of us own our own destiny. So
absolutely. We have influence on it, but we certainly aren't in the driver's.
No. So what do you do outside of work? You have mentioned travel, but love to know what does good travel mean to you, and what else do you do?
Yeah. So you're right with travel. We got, our son is 10. Our daughter just turned 3. Nadia, and Veer is his name. We got Veer a passport at 6 weeks old. Mm-hmm. And he had his first stamp at 7 weeks old. Now, he's been to 60 countries. My daughter's been, of course, she was isolated due to the pandemic for her first 2 years of her life. But she's been to probably now close to, probably about 8 or so countries.
You say your son has been to 60 countries?
That's correct. Yeah.
60.
Yeah.
That's a lot of countries. I mean, I think I travel a lot. I don't know if I can say 60 countries. So how are you doing that? How do you do that?
He's at the age of 7 weeks, he took his first trip and it was just over him. I'm convinced, I haven't not tested this yet, but I'm convinced that he could clear immigration and customs on his own now. It's just normal. But it's I've always been a history nerd. I've always had an appreciation for other cultures. So when we travel, we enjoy being travelers, not necessarily tourists.
Yeah.
Right? So I really want to, of course, you want to see all the big sites and experience, but really get off the beaten path. And in 2016, we went to Peru, and my son at that time was in kindergarten, I think it was. So, we're kind of thinking about, okay, now he's getting to the stage where we need to, I'd like to expose him more to local cultures and, just see like how fortunate he is. I remember hearing once, Sarah, I haven't validated what I'm about to say, but it sounds kind of cool and maybe it's true. But the minute someone takes their first breath in North America, so when a baby is born in North America, which, really just Canada or the USA, you're automatically in the top 2% of the world as it relates to household income. Just by, you win the lottery by being born. Yeah. Right? And so I've always seen that. I've been to many third world countries, and heck, I go back to India or I don't have any family there anymore. My ancestry's there. I often think, if my dad hadn't had guitars, what would I do for me? What would I be doing? Right? So we want to expose our son to that. So this really takes me into the other thing that kind of drives us. When we were in Peru, we found a local school and reached out to them and said, and it was a village, like a tiny village, about 40 minutes outside of Cusco. Just to give you a sense of it, dirt roads in the valleys, and their largest employer of this town was a bread factory.
Right.
So we went to the school, and it's one, a 2-room schoolhouse, essentially, a lot of open air, facilities, a decrepit playground. When I reached out to them before we left, like, look, we want to come there and would love to help in any ways or anything that you need. And it struck me when they said, we need school supplies and toothbrushes. Toothbrushes, what? And so I was fortunate that as a few EO members that were had dental businesses, I reached out to them here in Atlanta, and we filled up an entire suitcase of dental supplies that they were
Right.
gracious enough to donate, school supplies. And we get to the school, and man, it was just, for my son, it certainly, I think it was a reality check. It's like, oh my God, these kids are my age, and they're out here brushing their teeth in an open air sink, and they don't really have a proper playground, and 6 grades in one room studying different subject matters. And we decided to turn that into something bigger. So what we realized was, I mentioned earlier, the bread factory was the main employer.
Mm-hmm.
And what was happening is a lot of these kids, they'd get to around 4th, 5th, or 6th grade, and their parents would pull them out of school. They go to work, and I get it. I understand why. They got to earn.
Yeah.
But I also realized that we were fortunate at Cusco to be staying at a nice hotel. And if you speak English in a tourist town like Cusco, you're doing all right, relatively speaking.
Right.
Because that's a skill where now you're getting tipped in, US dollars, and you're making
you can make money.
Salary, wages. Yes. I said, man, if we could just figure out a way to encourage these kids to convince their parents to let them stay in school, even if my mission was simple, even if it's one more day of education, is that the one day when they finally start to learn English? Right? So we thought, all right, the best way to do that is let's build them a playground. So we went there with the intention of donating toothbrushes, toothpaste, floss, and school supplies. And we left with the conviction to figure out a way to put a playground there that would encourage the kids to come back to school.
Right.
Fast forward, another couple of really good friends of ours here in Atlanta, they're also EO Atlanta members, got together, and as entrepreneurs, like, hey, we're going to sell. Mm-hmm. This is important to us, and they have kids around the same age as my son. It's important to us to teach them the power of philanthropy and giving. And we pulled it off. We formed a nonprofit called KHELO, KHELO. That's the Indian word for play.
Right.
And it was our mission to build playgrounds in impoverished schools around the world, with the hope that it's a hook to keep that child coming back to school for at least one day. We've built now 3, currently working on our 4th playground. We've done one in Mexico, one in Peru, one in the Puerto Rico after a hurricane came through.
Yeah.
And exploring doing one in India, and potentially one in the western part of Ukraine. And philanthropy is, I grew up in a family that was very important, kind of cultural value, and thankfully that has remained in my DNA. Thankfully, my wife feels the same way, and that really drives us. We even fund 2 scholarships every year. Our family does. At Georgia State University, where I obtained my undergraduate degree, University of Kentucky. I'm sorry, Georgia State graduate degree, undergraduate, University of Kentucky.
Right.
And they're geared towards first-generation college students.
Right.
So, and that comes from, growing up in the hotel industry and seeing perpetual cycles of families that were unfortunately stuck in the spiral of hourly wage earning.
Yeah, you're right.
When I was
that way, yeah.
Yeah, when I was, you have exposure to hotels. When I was in high school, I'd see employees working for my father, and then I'd come back after graduation, even after working in the local world, and they were still there 15 years later. Which is great. That means they enjoyed working for Dad. But the sad part to me was when, over time, I would go back to visit, and they'd be like, "Hey, meet my daughter. She just started here as a housekeeper." Again, I'm not belittling housekeeping at all. I have massive respect for anyone that wants to get out and work and do. Yeah. But what can we do to help start climbing ladders? Mm-hmm. 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 And so that's why we fund scholarships for first generation students, because man, if that child can get a college degree, then talk about changing the trajectory of the next several generations of someone's life.
Yeah.
So that drives us. And then the last thing I'll say that drives me is just lifelong learning. Mm-hmm. I really enjoy just learning about not only business, but about just the world in general. So I set a personal goal. Every year I want to do 2 continuing education type courses, not for certifications, but just to get out there and learn stuff, right? So I've done courses through EO. I've done courses unaffiliated with EO.
Yeah.
reading quite a bit, and just always, kind of keeping the brain as sharp as possible.
Definitely. So much there, Andy. So I love everything you just said. It's like, I mean, you're running a very successful company. You put yourself, you can feel it 100% into it. And then you're giving so much back. So it's just, I love everything you've said. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, no, it's been really good. So where can people connect with you? If people want to reach out, Andy, what's the best way?
Yeah, for sure. So first is LinkedIn. You can find me just Andy Chopra. Google it, you'll find it. The Banyan Investment Group. Our website is banyan-ig.com. And then our nonprofit website is kalo-play.org. And company emails listed on the website. So if anyone ever wants to reach out directly, I'm always happy to connect.
Okay, really, really good. Thank you. Well, yes, thank you so much, Andy. It's been an absolute pleasure having you here.
Yeah, likewise. I wanted to thank you, Sarah, and I want to thank all the listeners as well. It's an honor to be on here, and I hope there were some key takeaways that will lead to value for your listeners.
There definitely were. So I want to thank our audience. If you learned something today or you laughed, tell someone about this podcast. We are growing our followers. The quality of our guests is incredible. And I think everyone can really benefit from listening. So once again, Andy, thank you. It's been another exciting episode of EO Atlanta's Taking Flight. See you next time. And so that wraps up another episode. Thank you for joining. For show notes and other episodes, visit us at takingflight.live. For more information about EO Atlanta, visit eoatlanta.org. Special thanks to the following sponsors: